NYPD.org.
One of the most disturbing elements of the Prohibition War is how it's made police the enemy of otherwise law-abiding cannabis consumers. Fortunately, one group of police officers knows the futility of prohibition and reaches out to educate the community and current law enforcement. Today, the Russ Belville Show visits with another speaker from Law Enforcement Against Prohibition with one clear message: cops say legalize drugs.
Welcome back, everybody. Half past the hour, and joining us by telephone, we have Joanne Naughton from Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. Joanne, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, and I was looking at your bio earlier. It says that you're a retired lieutenant from New York City. Now, would that be the NYPD you retired from?
It certainly is.
All right. Well, there's been a lot of news about the NYPD with respect to the whole stop-and-frisk program and Commissioner Kelly telling him to knock it off, and then it continued going on. Can you give us some perspective on this whole stop and frisk and what it's going to take to reform that?
Well, it sounds as if Commissioner Kelly told the police officers to knock it off and that they disregarded him. I have to tell you, and I can't say it strongly enough, police departments are hierarchical organizations, and the tail doesn't wag the dog. Police officers are not stopping and frisking people in tremendous numbers without the police commissioner and the mayor wanting them to do it. They're not doing it on their own. It's not like television. Police officers do not countermand the police commissioner's wishes. The police commissioner is the one who's responsible for the illegal stops and frisks. The police commissioner along with the mayor. The mayor has made it clear that regardless of the fact that police officers have been violating constitutional rights, and we see that a federal judge has found that in a trial that they just had recently, despite that fact, the mayor has said that he supports the police officers conducting the stops and frisks as they have been doing it, illegally. I assure you, I worked in undercover as well. I worked in the narcotics division, and I worked on patrol in uniform. And police officers don't go out there and willy-nilly do what they feel like doing, despite a police commissioner telling them not to. Absolutely not. They have been stopping people, especially in poorer neighborhoods where drug sales, drug usage is all out on the street. They've been stopping people in violation of Terry v. Ohio, which is the law that the Supreme Court case that sets out the parameters for stops and frisks. They've been violating that law, routinely violating it. The police commissioner has been aware of it. The mayor's aware of it. But they don't care. They think that the public likes it, not the public who's being stopped and frisked, or whose kids are being stopped, not that public. They're not too concerned about that public. But they're doing it and continue to do it because the police commissioner wants it done and because the mayor wants it done.
You make it sound as if the only possible fix for this is a change at the top.
Absolutely.
Now,
the police commissioner has been in office, I didn't mean to interrupt you, for too long, and so has the mayor.
And that brings us to, the recent primaries that concluded in New York City, and there was a story that we found on the Weed blog about the Democrat, Bill de Blasio, the Republican, Joseph Lota, and the Independent, Adolfo Carrion Jr., all three support reforms to cannabis laws. So perhaps in the next mayoral administration, we get some better results on this stop and frisk?
they may support changes in the cannabis law, but I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe Mr. de Blasio is the only one who supports a change in stop and frisk. However, you're right. It's up to the legislature to change the law. A new mayor, whoever he is, and whatever his policy is also, has an obligation to tell the police commissioner that police officers have to obey the law. Look at the money that it costs. So a change in policy about cannabis probably would make a change, but that's not what it should take. Police can't be violating the law, should not be violating the law, and police commissioners should not be asking them to do it, and mayors should not be asking them to do it with impunity.
Yeah.
It's the cops who take the rap.
Yeah, what a novel concept that our police officers ought to follow the law.
There you go.
That's amazing. And with that, in regards to that, in our chat room I'm watching, and one of our listeners, our live listeners there, just remarked, well, isn't that insubordination to the commissioner? But as far as I know, insubordination is not a crime. So, I mean, how would they ever punish that? By
firing him.
And that's not going to happen.
How. And don't think that, well, it does happen. That's what I'm saying. The police department is extremely hierarchical. And if some police officer, I mean, I chuckle at the thought of it, decides that he doesn't want to follow a rule, it's not television. He gets fired. That's what happens to him.
Right.
Fired. Police officers do not, insubordination is not tolerated. And believe me, I know, because I also worked in the office that prosecuted administrative charges against cops, because I'm also a lawyer. So I know, you don't, there's no such thing as insubordination. That's not tolerated. It may not be a crime, but you get fired if you decide that you're not going to follow the rules, if you're going to disobey. Cops don't have a personal interest in whether drugs are legal or illegal. There's nothing personal about it.
Yeah.
But if they don't make enough stops, they'll lose their command. They may get transferred. If they're in a special detail, they'll lose that. That's why they do it.
Well, it seems to me that a lot of this, we can trace a lot of this back to the Giuliani administration and that social theory of broken windows. The idea that if you police the little crimes of vandalism and broken windows and vagrancy and stuff like that, pot smoking, then that creates a lawful neighborhood where people are less likely to commit greater crimes. Can you speak to that? And do you think, I mean, if you listen to these guys, you'd think that if we legalized marijuana, suddenly crime would run rampant in New York City.
Oh, I think it's the other way around. If we keep marijuana and all other drugs, because at LEAP we argue that all drugs, including marijuana, should be legal. It's keeping these substances illegal that has crime running rampant, if it is. Keeping these substances illegal is what brings about a great deal of the violence. People who in the drug trade, who have a dispute with somebody, they don't go to court. They don't sue somebody. That's what courts are for, to handle disputes, but not when you're in a business that's illegal. That's where the violence comes from. They settled their disputes with violence. Organized crime settles their disputes with violence. And today's organized crime, again, is not like television or the movies. And the people who are in the drug trade business, the cartels, that's organized crime. They use violence. If we legalized all of these substances and regulate them, you will see an end to the violence. There's no need for violence when substances are legal. If I can buy heroin or cocaine or marijuana or meth or any of that stuff, if I can buy it legally in a regulated fashion, regulated, and taxed too, I might add, I'm not going to be on the street. I'm not going to be buying this stuff on the street, and I'm not going to be buying it from illegal dealers. We don't buy our alcohol today from organized crime. And you don't see liquor store dealers shooting it out on the street for turf. That stuff is regulated. And there are people who cannot drink alcohol without becoming addicted. That's a problem. It's a substance that's problematical for a lot of people. But we have legalized it. We have regulated it, and we tax it. And that's what we have to do with the other stuff. Frightening people and telling them that crime will increase, crime will become rampant if we legalize these things. Experience, particularly in other countries, shows this is not true. Switzerland has decriminalized all substances years ago, over 10 years ago. They're not going back. They like the fact that they have less crime and fewer health problems as well, and they're not going back. Portugal, we've read a lot about Portugal, the same thing. They're not going back. They're not going to say, well, we made a mistake and we're going to criminalize everything again. No, they were brave enough to try, and the experiments have worked. Decriminalizing is not enough, however, because you still will have a criminal element. We've got to legalize all of these substances. What's wrong with Americans making their own decisions about these things? And people are afraid, well, kids will be able to get them. Kids can get whatever they want now, And no one says to a kid, show me, prove to me that you're old enough. Kids don't get carded on the street. It will make it much more difficult for kids to get any of this stuff when it's legalized and regulated and taxed.
Well put. And Joanne Naughton was a 20-year member of the New York Police Department, from police officer to lieutenant, doing undercover street buys. And then you worked as an attorney on the defendant side. So you've got an amazing perspective, and we really appreciate you being a member of Law Enforcement Against Prohibition and coming on our show here to give people some of that wisdom. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. We'll speak to you again, I'm sure, at another time. We've got plenty to talk about.
Okay, good. I look forward to it.
All right. Thank you, Joanne, so much. And when we come back, we're going to have time for the Radical Rant. Although we're not really doing a rant so much today, I'm going to do my presentation that I gave at the Better People Forum this afternoon. We tried videotaping it, but the batteries ran out. So I will just do the presentation for you live. It's also available for download. It's got full notes and script and everything. You can download it for just $2, $1.99 from the 420radio.org shop. Be great for your next normal meeting or activist presentation. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.